actually going to take you to a floral art club in New Zealand. So just like then, you will need, if you want to do all these 4 designs, a wire hanger. The hook has been turned so it goes backwards rather than sideways, a wire circle any size, and some raffia. This first one is a floral chandelier, or you can use it as wall art, and it's using this lovely big wire loop. The ladies have been asked to bring sticks all cut the same lengths, some glass flower tubes, decorative wire or cable ties, flowers, vine and foliage. So, let's go to Cutty Cutty. The 4 members of the team had brought 4 different types of sticks, and they spent the first few minutes cutting them all to the same length. I had suggested 30 centimetres, but perhaps some of them didn't quite know what 30 centimetres was, but it didn't really matter. They all had different sticks, and this added to the interest of the piece, but of course you could use all exactly the same. Attaching them to the wire frame was done with cable ties, and as long as both ends of the stick actually touches the wire frame, you're going to have something called a cord, and this creates a really interesting outside with a big circle in the middle. They're also weaving some of them as they can back and forward in between, because this is a 2-sided piece, especially if you want it as wall art. So they flipped it over and also carried on adding more and more pieces of their sticks to both sides. So you can see some of those sticks got awfully long, and so they looked as if they're going to go right through the middle. Keep your sticks short, 12 inches or 30 centimetres, if you really want to get this lovely effect of having the circle in the middle as well. More and more came depth. This is really vital for this type of design, is to keep them adding wonderful depth, back and front. If it's hanging and swinging, you want it to look equally good on both sides. And now you can see the test tubes. They all bought 10 test tubes, so some were plastic, some were glass, some were attached with cable ties, some were attached with wire, and they kept them to one side, hoping to get some sort of a line that was going to also accentuate the circle, otherwise there was no point really having that shape. To the top and to the bottom it can get a little fiddly. Attaching them in 2 places, and then on went the flowers. This is where there was a lot of discussion about where to place them. Foliage first, then vine, or vice versa, and then the flowers on the top. But as you're doing it, remember to try and keep a very definite line, and of course you can cascade the line right down underneath the circle so it trails down. Really lovely idea if it's wall art. They obviously needed more time, lots more plant material to really define the line. Version 2 of Flowers and Sticks is a pew end or wall decoration, and it starts with a wire hanger with a hook round so it will hang. And the ladies have also been asked to bring some sticks and an assortment of lengths, some glass flower tubes, decorative wire or cable ties, flowers, vine and foliage. The coat hanger was put on the board just to hold it in place while they used cable ties to attach the sticks. In this case, these are called claddies, and they come from the New Zealand flax. They are the large seed heads. They are soft to cut but very light. Absolutely ideal if you're doing some wall art. After a bit of consultation, they managed to create a line going downwards, and then they began to add some horizontal lines as contrast. They also were discussing how they were going to cover up that hanger, which they did rather successfully by attaching the claddies around it. Standing back, they checked on proportions and decided that those horizontal pieces were far too long, so they got nipped off a little bit to make it much longer and not quite as wide. And more of those horizontal lines were then added. They were doing this by sight, designing as they went what looked right, bit of discussion, down a bit, up a bit, but you can see now that that coat hanger triangle is almost completely unnoticeable, and they get to the stage of having a look at all their plant material to say, what do we do next? This is always the fun part. So they added some more diagonal lines just to match that coat hanger. The team then began to attach test tubes and sprinkle the vines down and wind them around the structure. Before attaching each test tube, they decided where it needed to be so that the vines all cascaded downwards, and also as they started to attach the test tubes needed for the little winter chrysanthemums, they also first decided where they wanted those spots of colour. The test tubes themselves were wrapped with paper covered wire, and it just integrated them much better into the whole piece. So the job for them now was to just keep adding more and more flowers, more and more parts of interest, rose hips, all sorts of interesting forms and shapes in a thoroughly modern European way. You may also spot there the dried seed heads from Nigella and poppy seeds. These are all brilliant things that you can have in an autumn design when you've sourced the plant material from your garden, because they all work beautifully together and are giving you different forms. They're layering just one layer upon one layer upon one layer, and it gives great depth to a design like this, particularly if it's going to be a wall hanging. This one was taken to the local information centre, and it hung as pride of place there, advertising the Floral Art Club for quite a long while actually, because all of these flowers will last for ages. The third version of Sticks and Flowers is a table centrepiece. For this you'll need a table and some sticks that are 30 centimetres long or less, that's 12 inches, some glass flower tubes, cable ties or decorative wire, and flowers, vine and foliage. It all starts with the little pieces of stick that are joined in the corners to create a triangle, either with cable ties or with wire. The ladies all bought different sticks and different lengths of sticks. It didn't matter because it actually made it far more interesting. So they all started by making these triangles. However, you don't want to go too far before you begin interweaving them. This is what makes the whole structure far more stable so that you can lift it. So make one triangle and then create the next triangle inside the first one, and then the next triangle inside that one. So you're building it along the table, and the height you want it and the width you want it. Put some of the triangles underneath, some of them on top, some of them beside, and if you can, attach them from 3 different points, not only just to themselves but to the other triangles as well. The more attachments that you make, the stronger your structure is going to be if you need to move it. At this stage, some of the ladies in the team are a little bit bewildered, saying, what are we doing? And this looks really strange, and how can this turn into something that's really pretty as a table centerpiece? But then over time they sort of got it, and they could understand that they were building this random structure that wasn't formal, but which was creating all these tie points for their test tubes and for their flowers. Can you see how that they are getting a height that they want? If you want much higher, make your triangles longer, and just keep building and building and building. Once they had decided it was long enough, wide enough, high enough, and they used all the different colours of cable ties to make it party themed colours, they began to add their test tubes. They all brought different ones. Some of them were left over from orchid files, all sorts of things, and they attached them also to all those different tie points. Actually not too many of them, but spread right the way along the structure. So then they can then add the vine. The vine goes on first into the flower file, which was filled with water by now, and so it trailed from one end to the other. The stems of the flowers were then cut short, and they were also added into the files. It's very, very random, this style of arrangement, and it's all about a contrast between the flowers, the foliage, and getting as many of these beautiful flowers as you can. Because at the time of the year, of course, it was these homegrown dahlias. Lovely big focal points that rode along the top of this gorgeous, gorgeous structure. Design number 4, version number 4, sticks and flowers, 4 ways. This starts as a bouquet, a hand-tied bouquet just done with sticks. So it is a coffee table design that builds up on the coffee table. So once again, a bundle of sticks, this time of different lengths, some raffia. This is the raffia they're going to use. Some glass flower tubes, some flowers and vine. You don't need any leaves for this one, and you're going to do it in a decorative style. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it as we go along. The team created the bouquet first of all by bundling the sticks together and tying them with raffia and then splaying them out onto the table. From then they kept on adding more and more sticks so that the bundle got tighter and tighter and tighter and was able to hold itself in position. There was a problem though, because they had chosen bamboo as their sticks. It's very, very slippery. There's nothing that stops it moving, and so the bundle kept on sliding down and down and down. So their solution in the end was to add some outrigger sticks which held it all upright. These outrigger sticks went down straight vertically and they tied them in place with more raffia. It solved the problem, and finally their structure of sticks was stable. Happy with what they had done, they now added the test tubes. If the tubes went to the top of all the sticks, this, as you can see from how they're standing, the sticks could become quite a hazard for eyes and noses and things if anybody got stuck on them. So adding the test tubes to the top of each stick, that meant they could put flowers on them, and therefore they were no longer a safety hazard. They also tied raffia around the sticks and used the raffia to attach the test tubes. So now it was beginning to look more and more integrated and far more stable. From there it was onto the flowers, adding them into the test tubes and winding vine around the sticks. They also added some larger leaves dotted around the design, and this is to change the form and give you somewhere to rest. And this is what a decorative design is. It is where there is no obvious focal point. All of the flowers, all their foliage is spread throughout the design, and so you appreciate it from all sides and don't have an obvious front or a back. Everything is scattered without a pattern throughout. In the evaluation at the end of the workshop, this team said they would have liked to have had a lot more flowers to really, really enhance these sticks. But it was a workshop after all, and I know that a couple of them were going to go home and try it again using their own plant materials, so it was bigger and bolder. But they'd had the method and they'd had fun trying it.